Three, two, one, go.
Welcome to NYCBD with Jeffrey Hill on 710 WOR.
Good morning. This is Jeffrey Hill, your host right here on 710 WOR Radio in New York City. On the other side of the glass is my producer, I say this every week, Flipsio, also known as Anthony Filiplio.
The glass that doesn't exist.
The glass that does not exist. Okay, you've given me away, dude.
Well,
Remember.
I mean, when they watch the video on YouTube.
Oh, I forgot. We're on YouTube now, so you guys can see that I've always been saying on the other side of the glass, because that's what I grew up listening to.
I get it. It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's history. It's
it.
like saying I'm gonna make a record, right? There's all these musician types in the room, right?
True.
Right? Are there any records? No, there's no such thing as a record. How about an album? There's no such thing as an album either.
Actually, people were starting to buy the records again.
That is true. You mean the vinyls?
Yeah, vinyls.
It's very exciting. I know. Okay. All right, let's get right to it. Last week, we got you a little over your skis, I thought, Mr. Flipsinator, when we asked you the questions about the president and the opposition research being done on Joe Biden's son. But today, we're going to go back to your safety zone, you'll be pleased to know.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Giants, winners again.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping they start losing, though.
No, you were rooting for
I know,
first round draft choice. They're starting to win. They're starting to win.
It was good to see him win a couple of games, but now it's
Well, just think, if you paid $50,000 for a PSA, ladies and gentlemen, that's the right to buy a Giants ticket. Then you're pretty happy that they're finally winning, right?
True.
Because then you get to pay for the ticket on top of the right to buy the ticket, which costs $50,000. All right, there you go. All I have was one thing to say, and then we'll move on with the show. Patriots beat Buffalo and are now 4-0. That's all.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
You ever see those guys, the Bills fans, party?
Okay.
They party hard.
Right. Flips. We're running.
Just say it.
It's a business show, buddy. Here we go. Moving along. All right.
You ever jump through a table?
Okay, get back on the board, Flip. There you go. Okay, Flips, you're out of the show. Thanks very much. Nice having you with us. All right. Okay, moving along. We're available right here every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. on 710 WOR Radio in New York City. Then the show becomes available as a podcast on the iHeartRadio app and iTunes.
Going to be Spotify in the next couple of weeks.
It's the second time you promised that. In my business, my friend, we don't bring it up until we can deliver the goods, and so you're premature once again. What?
The iHeart guys are working on it. So.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, we love the iHeart guys. I'm sure they're going to do a great job. All right, just search NYCBD with Jeffrey Hill. The show is also on Instagram and on Twitter and Facebook. Just knock in NYCBD official. And yes, we're shooting the show live. We've got our third video guy in the room. His name is Mo. Mom and Dad call him Mubarak. All right, very impressive guy. He's got if you could see, I guess you can see, but maybe he's not on camera. He's got the nicest hat. We got 2 baseball caps and this very cool looking hat.
He's got the Pharrell hat on.
He's got Pharrell, exactly right. All right, Pharrell at night or something, right? What does he do? Okay.
Producer.
Okay, very good. All right, so who else we got here? That's all Jimmy Cozier's team, right? I mentioned to you before. He's the songwriter, nominated for a Grammy. He's got all these friends, superstar friends in the industry. We're thrilled to have him working with us and, of course, all of his people. Most important person of the entire team is Garen, right? Unbelievable, kind of what I call her, is the chief of staff.
She's the glue.
She runs the show.
She's the glue.
Flips runs the show. Garen runs the show. Everybody runs the show. I'm just here to kind of yak. All right, here we go. Let's discuss the 4 segments of the show, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. Our first segment is called Cannabis in the Tri-State +1, which is Massachusetts, where I will update you on key cannabis issues in these 4 states. Second segment is called Stunning and Amazing Facts, what I consider to be some of the most relevant issues and opportunities in the space today. And Flips is always excited about those. Your messages encourage me to make sure the focus of the segment will be my thoughts on national or international issues that impact the entire space. So keep those those direct messages coming.
Much better.
Yes, thank you very much. That's the young person answer. The old person answer is keep the letters coming to keep us posted on where we should take the show. All right. As you know, in the Stunning and Amazing Facts section, each fact is called a
stunner.
Look at you go. Your name is not Trip. What's your name? Flips. 2 weeks in a row, you got it right. Very good. Our third segment is today's guest. It will be my honor to introduce Roy Bingham, CEO of BDS Analytics, one of the leading data providers in the space. Roy is a Harvard MBA and former McKinsey consultant, a serial entrepreneur, and founder of BDS Analytics. He grew up in the UK, was a banker and financier in London, and then moved to the USA in 1993.
It's the third show in a row with an accent. Is that what's happening right now?
I think we're going to make that a surprise. I think that once again, the audience might be pleased with Roy's sound. Suffice to say, it's not nearly as, quote, harsh, close quote, as mine. All right. Lastly, we will end the show with segment 4 called Your Messages, providing answers to the most interesting direct messages we received following last week's show. We used to let Flips be totally responsible for that. We've pulled back that responsibility and made it a team effort. So
Probably
we're excited.
smart.
Yeah, I think it was. We'll be back for our first segment, Cannabis in the Tri-State +1, Massachusetts, right after this.
The Alchemist Kitchen celebrates the power of plants. They're the leading destination in New York City for CBD. Their organic CBD hemp flower is grown in upstate New York. So come on down and talk to one of their herbalists to learn about how CBD may relieve stress, anxiety, and pain. Located at 21 East 1st Street, right near the Bowery. Mention NYCBD for special savings for your first purchase. See you soon. Or visit them online at thealchemistkitchen.com. That's the ALCHEMIST kitchen.com.
Welcome back to NYCBD with Jeffrey Hill right here on 710 WOR Radio every Sunday at 8 a.m. After the show airs, it is available as a podcast on iHeartRadio and iTunes. The show is also available on all social outlets, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the special YouTube channel Jimmy Cozier and his team is helping us build at NYCBD Official. Jimmy made the promise. I shared it with you last week. Right after the show, wait 1 hour. That's 10 o'clock every Sunday. We're going to have the YouTube station up. Now, Flips, can you compete with that?
Yeah, I'm the one that posted, so yeah.
Okay, let's move on with our first segment, Cannabis in the Tri-State +1, which, of course, is Massachusetts. All right? So let's move forward. Every week, the Tri-State, of course, is New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, where about 65% of our listeners hail from. Let's start out with New York and Connecticut as a single bucket, right? All right, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, yes, he's in the news again, revealed Wednesday that he will be meeting with governors from throughout the region next month to coordinate marijuana legalization plans. Wow.
He's doing something right.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Flips. Cuomo and Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont made the announcement following a meeting in which they discussed how to ensure this consistency among cannabis programs that various neighboring states are working to enact. The pair said federal inaction on the issue has forced states to take the lead, but it's also important to avoid a patchwork approach among states in the region. Imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. You'd have people bouncing back and forth from New York to Massachusetts, Massachusetts to Vermont, and if there was different laws in a state-by-state basis. And guess what? That's the way it is right now. All right, we can do more together than we can working alone, Cuomo said. We don't have a federal government, in my opinion, that is providing leadership on these issues. They're saying to the state, hey, you're on your own. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I threw in the hey, and that's liberating on one level, said Cuomo. If we are on our own, let's hook our boats together, very creative line, and let's see if we can find our way through the storm, Cuomo said. The devil is in the details, and how do you do it? Will determine the success of the program. Doing it collectively and regionally, he said, makes sense. What did Lamont say? He and Cuomo talked about working together state by state. Okay, he agrees. Perhaps they should bring in Rhode Island and New Jersey, they said, right? So the idea that each state does its own thing simply doesn't work. Let's move on to New Jersey. Is marijuana legalization possible later this year? All right, I think not personally, but let's see what they have to say. Kicking off New Jersey Insiders Live event on October 2nd was a deep primer about the industry, the political landscape, and possible paths forward in the Garden State. Colleen Marr, president of the New Jersey League of Municipalities, Bill Pascrell III, don't forget he's the third, a lobbyist at Princeton Public Affairs, Beth Stravola, Fruquan Muzon. The whole team says the cannabis industry continues to grow in a proper, intelligent way. That it was actually Pascrell. He told the news. Although there are many challenges, medical cannabis has been extraordinarily successful as it evolves. There was a concerted effort to get adult use done by year's end, he said. All right. Do we believe it? I don't know. New Jersey's been struggling trying to get this done for quite some time. All right. Let's move on to Massachusetts. Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, signed on to 3 pieces of marijuana legalization legislation on Thursday, just days after Joe Kennedy, Democrat of Massachusetts, announced that he will campaign to unseat the senator next year. He, of course, is a representative. Though it's not clear if the primary challenge from a fellow Democrat directly inspired the back-to-back-to-back. Let me repeat that. Back-to-back-to-back. That's like 3 home runs in one inning.
It's a good game.
There you go. Cannabis or co-sponsorships, right? It does signal an abrupt evolution for Markey, who has previously declined to endorse broad marijuana reform. Interesting. Throughout his more than 40 years serving in Congress, Markey has only co-sponsored legislation to protect banks that service cannabis businesses, prevent federal interference in state medicinal marijuana programs, and require the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to study the benefits of cannabis for veterans. By the way, all good things, right? Flips?
Yes, correct.
All right, brilliantly done. How to jump in there. Well done, well done. All right, so there you go. There is kind of the overview of the critical issues taking place in the tri-state plus Massachusetts. When we come back, we'll move to our second segment, Stunning and Amazing Facts. Don't miss it. Right after this.
The Alchemist Kitchen celebrates the power of plants. They're the leading destination in New York City for CBD. Their organic CBD hemp flower is grown in upstate New York. So come on down and talk to one of their herbalists to learn about how CBD may relieve stress, anxiety, and pain. Located at 21 East 1st Street, right near the Bowery. Mention NYCBD for special savings for your first purchase. See you soon. Or visit them online at thealchemistkitchen.com. That's the ALCHEMIST kitchen.com.
Welcome back to NYCBD with Jeffrey Hill right here on 710 WOR Radio at 8 a.m. every Sunday morning. After the show airs, it becomes a podcast on iHeartRadio and iTunes. We're also available on virtually every form of social media at NYCBD Official. All right, let's move on to our second segment, Stunning and Amazing Facts with Stunner number 1. House approves marijuana banking bill in historic vote. The chamber advanced the legislation which would protect banks that service the cannabis industry from being penalized by federal regulators in a vote of 321 to 103. All but one Democrat voted in favor of the bill. Republicans were virtually split, with 91 voting for the legislation and 102 opposing it. Do I hear the words bipartisan being applied? Oh, my goodness. I thought that was a phrase no longer applicable in American politics.
About time.
For 6 years, lawmakers have been pushing for the modest reform, which is seen as necessary to increase financial transparency and mitigate risks associated with operating on a largely cash-only basis. Something many marijuana businesses must do because banks currently fear federal reprisal for taking them on as clients. The Secure and Fair Enforcement Act, SAFE, is sponsored by Representative Ed Perlmutter, Democrat from Colorado. It cleared the House Financial Services Committee in March and was officially scheduled for a floor vote last week. The vote was held through a process known as suspension of rules, meaning it required 2/3 of the chamber, 290 members, if all were present, to approve it for passage. And guess what? They got it done. All right, stunner number 2. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, you all know him, right? Inserted language into a spending bill report directing the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, to develop technology that can distinguish hemp from its federally illicit cousin, marijuana. The provision, which was attached to legislation to fund the Department of Justice for fiscal 2020, is meant to support hemp manufacturers and regulators who must ensure that the crop is at or below 0.3% of THC content, the legal definition of hemp in Mr. Trump's 2018 Farm Bill. McConnell championed a measure in the wide-ranging agricultural legislation that federally legalized hemp and its derivatives, and he's since devoted significant effort to securing protections for the industry. For example, he backed provisions added to separate appropriations bills last week that provides funding for the U.S. Department of Ag to implement hemp regulations. The committee is aware the law enforcement and other agencies need to have access to laboratory testing and on-the-spot field testing technologies and devices to distinguish between hemp and marijuana, McConnell's report language states. The panel notes current DEA research on the issue and is directing the agency to report back to the committee no later than 180 days after enactment of this act and not less than 6 months after that, until such time as technologies are identified and deployed to law enforcement in the field. All right, so what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen? When Mitch wants to get something done in favor of Kentucky, which is the biggest hemp state in the country, well, guess what? It gets done. All right, let's apply that to some of the other things he has on his desk, and maybe this country will move along a little bit faster. All right, let's go to stunner number 3. A top federal health official said on Wednesday that marijuana's status as a Schedule I controlled substance inhibits research, and there's a need for an alternative regulatory pathway so that researchers can more easily study cannabis. Well, that seems to make sense, right? You want to study it, but it's Schedule I, makes it very difficult to study. Let's move on to stunner number 4. A key Senate committee approved a spending bill on Thursday that again contains a provision preventing the Justice Department from intervening in medical cannabis states. But while the House representatives passed legislation this summer to extend those protections to all state marijuana programs, no members of the Senate Appropriations Committee attempted to insert similar far-reaching language to shield laws allowing recreational cannabis use and sales from federal interference. There are several reasons for that, unrelated to the panel's feelings about broader reform in general. A primary factor is that the congressional appropriations made a gentleman's agreement, love those gentlemen's agreement, earlier this year not to add new policy-related riders to spending legislation out of concern that inserting controversial poison pills could jeopardize passage of the overall bills, right? Fascinating. In other words, the last chance to get a more expansive marijuana provision in the enacted appropriations bill for fiscal 2020 is for the Senate negotiators to agree to merge the House-passed language into the final package sent to the president. A dubious prospect given the overall agreement among lawmakers to not add new policy riders. Even without that agreement, the prospects of getting the conference committee to adopt a marijuana provision approved by only one chamber ain't going to happen. The continued allowance of taxpayer dollars to be used to perpetuate criminalization is failed public policy in this direction. Okay, there you go. The most important, stunning, and amazing facts affecting this category this week. When we come back, we will move on to the third segment of our show, today's guest, where it will be my pleasure to welcome our guest, Roy Bingham. So don't go away. Roy comes from Harvard with an MBA, McKinsey as a consultant, and now runs one of the most important databases in the space called BDS Analytics. Come on right back.
The Alchemist Kitchen celebrates the power of plants. They're the leading destination in New York City for CBD. Their organic CBD hemp flower is grown in upstate New York. So come on down and talk to one of their herbalists to learn about how CBD may relieve stress, anxiety, and pain. Located at 21 East 1st Street, right near the Bowery. Mention NYCBD for special savings for your first purchase. See you soon. Or visit them online at thealchemistkitchen.com. That's the ALCHEMIST kitchen.com.
Welcome back to NYCBD with Jeffrey Hill, right here on 710 WOR Radio. After airing every Sunday at 8 a.m., the show moves as a podcast to iHeartRadio and iTunes. We're also available on all social sites, including YouTube at NYCBD Official. Let's move on to the third segment of our show, today's guest. It is my pleasure to introduce Roy Bingham. Roy is a Harvard MBA and former McKinsey consultant, a serial entrepreneur, and founder of BDS Analytics. He grew up in the UK, was a banker and financier in London, and then he moved to the USA in 1993. He started BDS Analytics after recognizing that the emerging cannabis industry lacked the kind of sophisticated, sales-based data that is both commonplace and essential in other, more established industries. Industries where I grew up, indeed, like consumer packaged goods, beverages, and healthcare, where, bottom line, data was indeed our competitive advantage. In those industries, market research and consumer behavior drive everything from new product development thinking to inventory and branding decisions, and we could go on and on. Among his prior businesses, Bingham had been both an early investor in Spins, a very successful data and analytics company for the natural products industry, and later an expert user of their data as a senior marketing executive in natural products. As you all know out there, I made a commitment to you, my listening audience, to bring you the critical facts and data that drive this category in an interesting and relevant format. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today Roy will help us continue with that theme with some amazing fact-based insights on the category. All right, welcome to the show, Roy. Good to have you with us.
Hey, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me.
All right. Excited to have you. Want everybody to know that Roy's kind enough to come all the way down from Rhode Island, got on a train, which apparently got in more or less on time, fought the New York City traffic, and here he is looking good. So thank you for that. That was very sweet of you to come down. All right, so let's just start out with some kind of basic questions. So tell us a little bit about your background. I kind of gave you a little bit of a highlight, but how did you get into cannabis, which is always an interesting story? Please.
Yeah, sure. So I'm basically a nerd. I like numbers, data, facts, figures. I looked at the cannabis industry about 6 years ago because some friends of mine said it's going to grow and it's going to grow really fast. And I couldn't really find any meaningful facts and figures on what the industry was like at that time. So I started to think about how many other people were studying the industry as well and saying, what the hell, how big is it? How fast is it growing? How many consumers are there out there? And I realized there was an opportunity to create a business like Spins, which was I was involved in starting, and like Leisure Trends, a company that my co-founder Liz Stahura started. So that was the origins of it. We weren't necessarily cannabis enthusiasts. I've always believed in legalization, but we really saw a business opportunity. A fast-growing industry that was already substantial. It wasn't tiny, had a lot of similarities to the natural foods industry that I'd spent much of my career in, had a lot of similarities to biking and outdoor, which was Liz's expertise.
Fabulous. So, it's an interesting thing, Roy, that, folks like us, you come from McKinsey, I come from a consulting background, as most of my folks know, and we're always hunting data, aren't we? So in other words, when we're looking at businesses, we're coming at it from a perspective of how big is it, how fast is it growing, what is the consumer thinking, what are the fundamental data points that we can kind of assess, right, the category from.
Without facts, you're just another guy with an opinion.
Exactly right. I love that line. I'm going to steal that one if that's all right with you, sir.
Go ahead.
All right, good. So bringing data to the table in this category is a very challenging thing to have been doing. And that is indeed what BDS stands for, I believe. So maybe you could just kind of elaborate a little bit on BDS analytics, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing that people ask me is what products are selling in the dispensaries in Colorado, for example. And the fact was that nobody had that data organized in any kind of way. I actually thought it was basically a bag of weed. People were going and they were getting the pot weighed and they were leaving with a brown paper bag. Of course, it turns out that people were starting concentrates businesses and ingestibles businesses, and those were beginning to look like normal consumer packaged goods. So we started work with a number of dispensaries in the Boulder and Denver areas, and they gave us access to all of their point-of-sale transactional information. We then categorized and organized all of that data in terms of what they actually sold through the dispensary. And then we could get a clear idea of the categories. And of course, about 80% back then in 2015 was flour in terms of revenue. But you could see the start of ingestibles are about 7 or 8%. You see a little bit of pre-roll sales, and you saw a bit of concentrate sales. So that was the first level of categories. Well, we've gone far from that. We've now processed 1 billion of those transactions. So 1 billion transactions where consumers went and bought a product in a licensed dispensary. And we've categorized and organized that into 140 different categories and subcategories. We have over 150,000 products in our database, and we're tracking more than 7,000 different brands that have been launched into the cannabis industry.
Which is an absolutely fascinating number. So That's a number one I want to come back to, the 7,000, because that's going to many of the things that you just said can really open the eyes of a lot of the listeners here. So as a starting point, those of us that come from a consumer packaged goods space or a beverage space or any number of other spaces, we've always had, as we've been running businesses, data sources, right? And primarily, those data sources came in the consumer packaged goods universe originally from Nielsen, the AC Nielsen company. And then ultimately Jan Fagoni launched IRI many, many years ago. And that's kind of been a back and forth tussle for quite some time. But they revolutionized consumer packaged goods in many ways by bringing the same kind of data. So one of the things I want to underscore to the folks that are listening is with the help of the BDS analytic data, you can begin to do much more sophisticated analytics. We're going to get into a little bit of that on this show. But if you want to go deeper, if you're a private equity fund, if you're folks that really want to rip this business apart, you're going to want to spend some time with their data. I have personally looked at their dashboard most recently, and it's really quite impressive. All right, so now that I've kind of brought up IRI and Nielsen, the press makes it quite clear, and you've announced that you're close to there's some kind of a strategic alliance relationship with IRI. And Nielsen has gone after another group that supplies data in the space. Perhaps you could just talk a little bit about what was the strategy behind the IRI thing? How does that working? And think about it from two perspectives. One perspective is there's a lot of folks in the audience that know IRI and have been working with it for years. And there's others that have no idea what IRI is. So I'm going to say it's Information Resources, Inc., IRI, and they're data suppliers, not unlike yourselves. So tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, sure. So this industry is the data analytics industry, is quite incestuous. People go from IRI to Nielsen to NPD. My team come from most of those companies, and we're well covered throughout the business. And, of course, they are the data suppliers for market research purposes to the Fortune 500, to big CPG companies. And as you say, those companies now wouldn't be able to move with that kind of data. It's part of the DNA of how you do business if you're at P&G or Unilever, for example. And so they obviously have clients who are saying, tell us about the cannabis industry. We see it's substantial. We see it's growing really fast. And we need some data to get some data points. Is it a threat to us? Is it an opportunity for us? And of course, IRI and Nielsen didn't have any data because they're not covering the dispensary channel. And they looked around and they realized that we were, and that we were fundamentally a miniature of what they are in many respects because of the skills that we developed working in those companies previously. And so they now enable us to get our data to their clients through their system at IRI. And a system called Liquid Data that's going to launch in the next couple of weeks. So, we launched the partnership about 3 months ago.
Oh, very exciting. So having been an IRI user and having respected that organization for countless years, for those of you who know me, that's like 40 years, although I hate to admit that. I think it's a great partnership, and I think the combination of what they can bring to the table and what you guys can certainly bring can really make a difference. I do want to underscore one thing that Roy said, and that is this notion of, is it going to help me or is it going to hurt me? So there are some companies out there that perhaps represent the analgesic space, so they represent the beverage space, they represent spirits, they represent tobacco, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, but that might be a hurt, meaning that there are people that are using cannabis, which you're tracking, of course, and perhaps they're using that as a replacement for something else, which we've been talking about on this show, countless times. So that's the hurt notion. The help notion is many of these guys, like the tobacco businesses in the form of Altria, have invested in Afria, which makes it an interesting rhyme, I guess, and $1.8 billion. And many of the other players, like Constellation, which we've mentioned on the show, they're the beer players that have Corona, and of course they have Modelo, I believe it's called, $45 billion U.S. company. So they've invested $4 billion in the space, and of course that investment was Canopy Growth. So there's the help side and there's the hurt side, and oftentimes it's the same receiver, isn't it? Right? Okay. So the category kind of has been maligned or loved, I guess, depending on, kind of where you sit. And often it's the data firms that define kind of where truth is, isn't it? Because when it's all said and done, it's a little bit like marketing. What I say to people is, what do you think of that? And I say, well, I either love it or I don't love it. But let me tell you what I think. Let's ask 100 consumers what they think. And whatever they say, that's my answer, right? And the same is true in the data space, I believe, which is...
Yeah, you're dead right. In my last company, Renew Life, we were the largest probiotics company in the U.S. And I would show my boss, here, look at the sales are going up by 25% a year. This particular product got off to a fantastic start, and we've got $2 million worth of sales. And he would say, show me the IRI or the Nielsen numbers.
Yeah, exactly right.
Because they're third-party objective data.
Yeah.
I think you're right, but I would like to get validation from those guys too.
Right. Well, the good news then is you see every consumer packaged goods guy I know, they go in there with your data sourced on the bottom. So when somebody says, where'd you get the numbers? You say, see that? Down there. That's BDS Analytics. They gave it to me. And all of a sudden, you take on that same sense of credibility. All right, so let's start with kind of the 30,000-foot view, and then we'll kind of narrow in, right? What are consumers saying overall about legalization? They like it, they don't like it? Please.
Oh, yeah. So we surveyed now 100,000 consumers of cannabis, but also people who are not consumers. That we call them acceptors, about 1/3 of the population, and rejectors, about 1/3 of the population, who say, no, I'm not going to consume. About 80% of the population say, yes, we are behind legalization for medical purposes. And about 60% of the population are saying we're behind it for adult use purposes as well, anyone 21 plus.
Which is fascinating, everyone. So keep that number in mind. 64% is the number that he references in terms of good for adult use, medical use.
Yep.
Medical use, right? All right, which is the position that everybody knows that we take on this show. We are very supportive of medicinal. Adult use is a different discussion. All right, so let's talk about the kind of use you're seeing. Let's look first at adult use states, if you would, please. What are you seeing there in terms of penetration?
Yeah, so there are 11 states that we're tracking now who have legalized for 21 plus, and 38% of the population of 21 plus aged population have consumed in the last 6 months, according to those surveys. That leaves about 33% who are what we call acceptors. They're saying, I haven't consumed in the last 6 months, but I'm into it and I might try it sometime. And just the remaining about 33% who are rejectors, who are saying no. But in fact, interestingly, when you ask them, what if a loved one, what if it would be helpful for your family or friend, they usually say, yeah, fine, it's just not for me.
Right, understand. Very, very helpful.
So a massive percentage of the population,
right.
And sort of demographically, it's extremely diverse. It's everybody's mother, sister, daughter, brother, uncle, all ages, all colors, all shapes and sizes, all educational backgrounds. Tends to be a fairly highly educated population. Most people have jobs. They're productive members of society. They're consuming cannabis.
Love that. Okay, so I've sat with any number of CEOs and we've been chatting about all these data and let's say demographics as an example. And so there's a conversation. Start at age 21 for adult use, obviously, because that's the adult use number, not unlike the spirits category. But importantly, when you're thinking about medicinal, that goes all the way back. So all the way back to virtually, just beyond birth. So we had Heather Jackson here, for example, head of the Rock Realm of Caring that many of you may remember. She was on a few shows ago. And the Realm of Caring, of course, is the nonprofit side of essentially what began as the Stanley's organization, which created CW Hemp, which became public. And indeed, I was just watching CNN with Sanjay Gupta. The famous Sanjay did yet another piece, this time once again underscoring the value, indeed, of the Stanley brothers and what they created. So anyway, moving along, so her point of view was, she gave it to her daughter, and of course, Charlotte Fiji, which began all of this. Actually, I think Heather has a son, not a daughter, at the age of 4. But that was medicinal use, and you made that point earlier. So when our folks are listening to this, you got two issues. You got the issue of adult use and how you might go at that marketplace, and then you got the issue of medicinal use, and that's a completely different set of demos because it's need-based. It's kind of, disease state-based. But let's talk.
Well, actually, there's a large overlap. There are a lot of people who are consuming in the adult use channels, but using the product to treat medical conditions. They're just not choosing in their state to register as a medical consumer. And of course, some states now have dissolved the medical consumer category, like in Washington State or really in California. It's more or less gone away and been replaced by adult use.
Right, which would make all the sense in the world, wouldn't it? Because once you've got adult use, then anybody over 21 can get product. So
yeah, and you don't have to be in a government database, which is important to some people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Fascinating. So the bottom line of the point that I was making is on the medicinal side, it can be used for all the way down to young children and on, let's say, and then there's another market that looks at virtually all ages. So do you have a sense for, in the absolute, what this category is generating and what your projections are going forward, please?
In terms of the size of the market today, yes, we think this year the cannabis market, cannabis sold through licensed dispensaries, will be about a $15 billion market. That's going to grow in the United States to $31 billion by 2024. So that's just cannabis sold in licensed dispensaries. But of course, now we have other cannabinoids, especially CBD, that most people are very aware of. And that can be sold in general retail. So what I just described was the licensed dispensary sales of THC-containing products. But the cannabinoid market will be about double that by 2024. We're projecting a $45 billion market by 2024.
Now, that's all in then, the $45 billion, or is that, I'm sorry.
That's all in.
Okay,
yes.
so all in.
Yeah.
So said another way, it's roughly half of that number that are THC-based through dispensaries, and then it's the other half that are kind of what I'll call other cannabinoidals, of which the one that most of the audience knows about is CBD.
That's right.
Yes. Okay.
That's right. But with many other cannabinoids on their way.
Exactly. We're going to be doing some other shows, ladies and gentlemen, on the other cannabinoids in the space because many of those are targeted to specific types of disease states and other kinds of, if you will, I'll just say in-use result. All right. So you've done a tremendous amount of work defining the category, and we thank you for those numbers. But it comes from somewhere, doesn't it? In other words, or doesn't it? Most people, when they're looking at a category assessment, are thinking about, okay, I'm going to enter a business and it's going to cannibalize something, right? And therefore, I'm going to grab my market share. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's a completely incremental marketplace, doesn't necessarily cannibalize that much, right? So here is kind of something that actually plays both roles, doesn't it? Because it's cannibalizing some businesses and it's incremental as well. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about, the conversation as to what people were using that are now using cannabis. Is it replacing? Is it in addition to? What are the categories?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to recognize is that legal cannabis is new, but cannabis is not new to consumers in America. And there is a large illicit market that is ongoing in the United States. It's probably a total market in the $60 or $70 billion range. We now have a $15 billion licensed legal cannabis market. So its penetration into the total is only about 20%.
So let me just pause there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that projection says at $15 billion legal, 20% of the total market. That means 80% obviously not legal. We're suggesting, as Roy mentions, roughly $50 billion. We can have that conversation separately, but that's a number that's very important to discuss at some point, please.
Yeah, so we've got great examples now. If you've seen what's happened in Colorado, in some respects, you've seen the future. So in Colorado now, illicit sales are less than 20% of the total market sales. It's had 5 years of adult use, 21 plus, fairly well regulated. Everybody's pretty used to it, and the companies have generally behaved themselves rather well. Now, if you're in a state like California, the illicit percentage is more than 80% of the market still. That's still in the rollout phase with adult use. So this is the first thing that we have to recognize, is that what's happening is people who used to consume illicitly are now going into licensed and legal medical or adult use dispensaries and purchasing products legally and much more comfortably for everybody, I'm sure, including me. So that's the first thing. It's just taking away from a market that was all underground. That's why it's creating 400,000 jobs at the moment. Those jobs are jobs with benefits and health care, and they're above ground. Is it really creating 400,000 new jobs? No, it's people who used to work in the illicit space to some extent who are now moving into those proper jobs.
Right, but let's underscore one point, ladies and gentlemen, which Roy implies, and that is, number one, the illicit jobs weren't paying taxes. The illicit jobs were not getting health care. The illicit jobs weren't contributing to the school system, and on and on and on from there, right?
Great point. Yeah.
Please, back to you.
Yeah, so now the next question is, okay, are people actually changing their behavior because they're starting to consume cannabis or because they're starting to consume illegal cannabis? Actually, what's happening is that because of the access to legal cannabis, more people are being comfortable about purchasing cannabis. So we have a generation of new adopters. They might be people who, like me, back in the 80s, knew a little bit about cannabis and then basically went away from it during their career. And now they're saying, okay, it's totally legitimate. I can go and buy it in a dispensary. So we've got these new adopters coming in, and they're causing the market to grow, the total market to grow at 4 or 5 or 6%, okay? But nearly all of that growth is in the legal channel. So that's why the legal channel, as it goes from one state to another, as legalization takes place, the legal channel is growing at over 25%. So that's very important. Then the next thing is, as these people start to consume cannabis, are they replacing some other activity? And the obvious one to think about is alcohol, and we've surveyed them. And it's not just a general question about alcohol. It's, are you a premium beer drinker? Are you a regular beer drinker? Do you drink spirits? Do you drink wine? Have you changed your consumption of any of those products since you started to consume cannabis? And the answer is yes. Most of them are saying we have reduced our consumption materially, somewhere in the 10 to 20% range. That doesn't mean they've eliminated the use of those of alcohol. They've just reduced it, or at least they think they've reduced it. Because remember, survey bias is very important. We often like to answer questions in an aspirational way. I wish that I had actually not had 4 beers last night, and so I'm going to say I reduced my beer consumption. But the reality is I actually did have 4 beers last night.
Which is indeed fascinating. So nonetheless, you guys have done behavioral data. You've done consumer data. You've dug into what people are using and what they're saying is in replacement of, correct?
Yes.
Or in addition to, right? So what are you seeing are the replacement ofs, and at what level, and what is actually incrementing?
We're seeing a material impact on low-priced beers and not so much impact on wine, for example. When we look at over-the-counter drugs, a material impact, people are saying, 20% of people are saying, I've reduced my use of analgesics or sleep aids or other over-the-counter drugs. Again, that might mean that the industry's gone down by a few percent. Perhaps they've reduced their consumption by 20%. 20% times 20%, you get a 4% reduction in that category.
Excuse me one sec. Flips, did you know that one? When he said 20% times 20%, were you at 4%?
No.
Of course you weren't.
Yeah.
All right.
Not even close.
Yeah, I want to make sure Flips is still with us, because without Flips, there is no show. All right, back to you, Roy.
These brilliant young people these days, they don't have to learn arithmetic anymore.
They don't have, right? Exactly. They just press buttons and they ask Siri, and Alexa says an answer. Everybody's got an answer.
Alexa turns the lights on.
All right. It's back to our show. Okay, quiet down. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so therefore they think, okay, maybe about a 4% impact on the analgesics market. That's about a $6 billion industry in the United States. So it's a small impact. But in a market that's only growing 1 or 2% at the present time, to people who are selling products into that market, they need to be aware of this.
Right. So I would say to you, the brand manager who's listening to the show that's responsible for Tylenol or Advil or you name your favorite one, right? They're getting a little nervous because their category is going up, as Roy says, 2%. Perhaps there's a 4% reduction. Therefore, net, they're going to be down, right? So
yes.
That's an interesting way to think about it. All right, helpful. Now, are you seeing on the other side, are you seeing growth as a result of cannabis? There's a lot of conversation. I go back a few years myself, and I went to a school where, quite honestly, the convenience store was one of the busiest places in the entire university, especially after, shall we say, 10:30 at night. It got very, very busy. There's a reason for that. All right, so are you seeing anything, let's say in the gum and mint, chocolate, candy, salty snacks business that suggests that people might be consuming more?
Not really. It's not really having a material effect overall in those categories as far as we can tell. But there are a few companies that actually see it as a marketing opportunity. So they're sort of around 420. They're saying, okay, maybe I'll launch a little campaign now, a bit tongue-in-cheek, and say, okay, if you're hungry, then my pizza shop is open, or my pizza brand is the one that you want to go to, or if you get the munchies and you want a big bag of chips, pick mine. Right.
Oh, so we mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago legal seafood in Massachusetts. When the Sons took over the business, which was quite a while ago, they just ran a thing that says it's officially legal, and the whole thing is a play on words between cannabis being legal in Massachusetts and, of course, legal seafood as the number one food, restaurants serving seafood. So it's quite fascinating, and it is getting leverage. But let me ask you this: there is something to be said for cannabis impacting appetite, as we know. Oncologists that understand cannabis, that understand, if you will, Eastern and Western medicine, they'll suggest to a cancer patient to stimulate appetite, they should consider cannabis.
Well, I think we all know it works. I eat everything in the kitchen if I've had an edible. Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. All right, so I guess that makes the point. I was just trying to get it down a little bit lower, and I think the in the kitchen edible comment was right on the mark. All right, by the way, I do the same thing, and it's quite remarkable. All right. I work out all day, ride my bike to and from the studio, go home at night, relax a little bit, and then look at the refrigerator. And if I open it, everything gets blown up. All right. So, kind of what you just said, though, and we were kind of kidding a little bit about, kind of the Advil brand manager. But, the Corona brand manager, which is Constellation Brands, they invested $4 billion US because of this very issue, right? Because A, perhaps they thought it was an issue. B, it's a growth opportunity, if nothing else, right? So in other words, whether they cannibalize the existing business or they simply use cannabis as a platform to launch more beverages because they know that beverage-infused cannabis has a market, right? That there's a lot of interest there. Talk to me a little bit about what you've learned in the tobacco space. What have you learned in tobacco?
Yeah, the tobacco companies have been much slower to react. Only Altria is really making major moves at the present time. They've just been rather cautious about whether they want to get involved in the cannabis industry. Obviously, they're federally regulated, and they're concerned about getting involved in something that's currently federally illegal. So what they've been doing outside the United States has been fairly limited. But clearly they know they have technological capabilities, marketing capabilities, you name it, that could be applied to the cannabis industry.
I guess my question, that was helpful, but I want to go also more into cannibalization of cigarette smoking. So what does your data suggest is the impact on tobacco consumption of an adult use state?
So we haven't actually really delved into that yet. We're starting to do that. We've been doing these surveys for 2.5 years now, every 6 months. We're just about to do another one, a very comprehensive survey, and we'll get more into the tobacco data in the survey.
All right, so Flipsy's given me a little bit of a hook here, but there are a couple of questions I wanted to get to. The first question, so we just make this quickly if we can. In 2014, I believe your data says there was 166 brands across just a couple of legalized states. In 2018 and now 2019, what is that number roughly?
About 7,000 different brands.
7,000 brands.
That have had sales of more than a few $100s.
Right, okay. And then if we ask the CBD question, what's that number?
Well,
roughly.
There we have to look at sales within the dispensary channel that are primarily CBD, and there are several hundred brands there, and then sales outside the dispensary channel in general retail, which includes new companies that have been formed just around CBD, and then also a lot of dietary supplement and nutrition companies that have recently launched lines. So I was at Baltimore at Expo East a few weeks ago. There were at least 150 different CBD lines, either unique companies or lines within other companies.
Right. So in New York City alone, I did an audit roughly 3 months ago. There was 110 brands, and I would say there's another 50 that have been launched since then. So in New York City alone, sitting in the convenience stores and various other locations, there's, call it 200 brands. Do you have a national number that's got CBD in it? Hazard a guess? It's got to be over 5,000. Would you agree?
No, I don't really have a national number yet.
Okay. All right. Well, Jeff Hill's going to give you a national number. I'm suggesting that if the cannabis number sold through dispensaries is at 5,000 brands, did you say 7,000, I believe? Yeah.
7,000.
It's got to be north of that. That's all I'd have to say. All right. So 2 seconds.
I'd say it will be. I don't think it is yet, actually, Jeffrey.
Okay.
CBD is really taking off right now. So there's new products being launched tomorrow, new brands being launched this week, many of them, but they're not yet registering the sales.
Okay. I'll take that as fact. All right. 33 medicinal states, 11 adult use states. Canada, all legal. Switzerland, legal. Portugal, adult use legal. Do you cover the international marketplace, and in the very little time we have remaining, thoughts about that?
Yeah, so our industry intelligence services actually model 40 different countries globally in terms of the size of the market, the growth of the market, what's the regulatory trend. And that's how we come up with those global numbers. Now, the United States, we still project to be about 75% of the global market even in 5 years. It's the big kahuna, as it is in most markets. And Europe is getting going, but it's getting going with a medical model, with the exception probably of Luxembourg. Portugal hasn't really legalized in terms of licensed, it just decriminalized. And so what we're waiting to see is the first major European country that has adult use for 21 plus. And that is the inflection point. That's the moment when the market takes off. It took 25 years for California to get going as a medical market, 25 years for Canada to get going as a medical market. And then suddenly they introduced adult use, and those markets grew very rapidly, especially in Canada, of course, right now.
Absolutely. So I just like to say that we live in a technology kind of environment, and fact checking is fundamental, right? So there's nothing like having a gentleman next to you that knows all the numbers. So here I am quoting numbers, and I've been quoting numbers all my career. And it's great to have Roy sitting with me because he knows the numbers. So when I say something that's a little bit, shall we say, inappropriate, he's right there with the answers. And I want to thank him for that. Now, I want to make another point just to build on that, and that is that's what is the fundamental need in this business, ladies and gentlemen, right? If you're an investor, if you're a private equity firm, if you're a CEO thinking about what new brands I'm coming out with, if you are virtually anything in this space, if you're an existing company worried about losing some business because in the analgesic space, the cigarette space, the spirit space, or other spaces, there's potentially some cannibalization taking place, then what should you do? My answer: you should get BDS Analytics and start getting into it with Roy and his people. All right, last question. It's rare that you get an opportunity to speak to the universe. Well, here you are. The universe is listening. Let's hope. I hope that's more than my mom and dad anyway. I know they're listening, but let's assume there's a few other people listening as well. Would you like to say anything to kind of in this open mic environment to just, kind of address your issues either personally or professionally?
Well, I just want to say congratulations to all the listeners out there for listening to this show. This is the first of its type that I've come across with someone like Jeffrey Hill, who's got tons of experience, longer than he's prepared to admit, about growing businesses, using facts, figures, data, analysis, opinions, surveys, and all of these kind of things. That is what will succeed in the cannabis and cannabinoid industry. It's a combination of instinct, gut feel, risk-taking, but combining all of that with the data that you can assemble to support your opinions. And Jeffrey's a great example of that in his career, and I really admire the rest of you for listening to this show. I hope I haven't been boring. I've listened to the show myself and found it quite fascinating.
All right. Well, first of all, I can tell you haven't been boring, not at all, because most of my audience knows this is what I call infotainment, ladies and gentlemen, right? Lots of data presented, hopefully, in a somewhat interesting way. Well, Roy, we could go on for a long time. I'd like to say thank you very much. I know you have a very significant schedule. ArcView is taking place right now, and for those of you who are listening that know about ArcView, that's a very important meeting in New York, in the space, and of course, Roy is a very important presenter in that environment. So I'd like to thank you very much. I look forward to spending more time together. I personally am committed to understanding and utilizing the database because I think it is very rich and can help me make better decisions. And so thanks again for coming.
Thanks a lot, Jeffrey.
All right. When we come back, we're actually going to skip the fourth segment of the show, your messages. I thought that interview was really going quite well, and I wanted to let it run.
The Alchemist Kitchen celebrates the power of plants. They're the leading destination in New York City for CBD. Their organic CBD hemp flower is grown in upstate New York. So come on down and talk to one of their herbalists to learn about how CBD may relieve stress, anxiety, and pain. Located at 21 East 1st Street, right near the Bowery. Mention NYCBD for special savings for your first purchase. See you soon. Or visit them online at thealchemistkitchen.com. That's the ALCHEMIST kitchen.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed today's show. As I mentioned, we're going to leave out the DM section. We're going to do those next week. All right. Everybody knows, I hope by now, that you can get the show on virtually all social media. NYCBD Official in the search box, please. All right, don't forget, we are now, literally in 1 hour's time, going to be up, hopefully everywhere, but we're certainly going to be up on YouTube, and you can get this whole thing visually. So when your kids get out of bed and you want to watch the whole thing a second time, I say do it. All right, we'll be back next week for another 60 minutes of the critical issues facing cannabis and CBD, the medical implications, the political implications, and the financial implications. Remember, knowledge is built brick by brick. Today you got my 21st brick. Until next week, this is NYCBD with Jeffrey Hill.